like having a thief in your house, and things just keep disappearing. And this will happen in your life and in your world. Things will disappear. People will disappear.
When I started to talk to myself, I realized that I spoke down to myself. So it was like I was talking to a child rather than talking to an adult. So the way I was doing it, it kind of felt very patronizing. The main thing for me is wondering, how can I actually speak to myself properly? Because when I actually tried to speak to myself, I realized it kind of ties in with influence, but inverted. Like I'm influencing myself not to talk to myself by talking to myself like I don't like myself. Do you see what I mean? Like it's kind of backwards because it doesn't feel right. Because I know how to talk to you, I know how to talk to everybody else in this room, I know how to talk to the lady down the corridor. Because you have to abide by ways of speaking.
Yeah,
I have to.
So I think there's a reason for all these feelings and all these thoughts, and we have to find the truth in them. So I imagine, like I visualize what you're saying now. It's like you're about to get up and do some public speaking, and there's this guy sitting, across the theater or whatever it is, and he's basically saying, kind of sit down, like shut up, you shouldn't get up and speak. But in reality, it's you. It's like it's like a figment.
But that's what was so surreal about it. It was the fact that we used the example in the last video of you can just stop thinking about it and turn the TV off. But it wasn't even like I stopped thinking about it. It was like I drove myself away from the thought.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I just went, I'm not going to think about it and turn the TV on. It was like the other version of myself that I'm talking to is like, I don't want to have this conversation with you.
Yeah.
That's why it felt so alien to me, I think.
Yeah, well, I think, okay, so that's something that's a bit irrational, and by irrational, I mean it's not congruent. Like, it doesn't add up, and I think the issue is that a lot of the time when people think of something irrational, they tend to, again, just knock it away because it's irrational. It's not correct. Yes, but something that isn't correct needs to be made correct, not just thrown away, because it does exist. Let's try to find the truth in it, and we have to delve into it a bit and ask, well, separate these two parts of you. It's like the part that wants to actually dig and delve into your truth and understand yourself, and this other part of you that's basically putting you down. Like, separate them. And let's talk about this part of you, the guy across the theater that's basically saying, shut up, kind of sit down, don't get up and speak. Like, why is he saying that? Don't reject his existence. Don't deny his existence. He's there. He's telling you to shut up.
Yeah.
What's his reasoning?
But that's why I don't know. I think that's part of the problem.
Is this a part of you because this is a part that's telling you to shut up, right? It's not like right now we're speaking, you're talking, you're using words. It's not like that part of you is now right now saying to you like, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet.
Yeah.
That part comes out when you speak to yourself. So you're saying you don't know, which is fair enough, because I don't think you would know, because it's a part that doesn't exist very often. Yeah. It's a part of you that exists when you're having a conversation with yourself. Or what was it about this shut up? Like, what was behind this shut up? Like, sometimes you tell someone to shut up, it's like, this guy's annoying, be quiet. Or this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, be quiet. Or I want silence right now, be quiet, so it's nothing to do with him. There's different types of telling someone to be quiet.
I think because the things I was talking about didn't come from a place of really wanting to know the answer. It was more just seeing if I could discover the answer. I think the internal self was basically just like, it was almost didn't understand what I was asking, so it was like, just shut up, like just enough, like this isn't a conversation I want to have. So I think it came from lack of understanding rather than lack of kind of thought, if you see what I mean. It was just, I think it ties back to what I was saying, like if you're not so sure of who you are, it's difficult to have the conversation with yourself. And I think because I didn't feel 100% with who I am, the person I'm speaking to doesn't feel like I'm speaking to myself.
So that's what I was just thinking about as you were speaking, that you said before, I was asking, for the sake of asking, I wanted to see if I could do it, if I could speak to myself. So when you're speaking to yourself to see if you can speak to yourself, it's not a genuine request. And I ended the last video by saying, basically, if you ask, you will find. If you ask the questions, you will find the answers. Now, in my head, when I say that, when I say ask, I mean genuinely ask. It needs to be a true ask. Is just a word.
Yeah.
What is ask? If you break down ask, it's like curiosity. You're asking someone because you're curious. You want to know. That's the foundation of asking. It's wanting to know. But I can ask you why this table is here like this. I don't actually want to know that. I just came up with that question right now. It's still a question. I still asked you.
Yeah.
But is it a real ask? No, it's not, because I don't care why this table is. It just is. So when you don't, it's like fuel you need for the journey. The request, the curiosity that you have is your fuel. If you don't have that fuel, you won't get to where you need to be. So if you get in the car and you start driving, you don't have enough fuel to get from one place to the other place, you're just not going to get there. It's obvious. And that fuel is the curiosity. It's the real desire. If you don't have a desire to actually get to know yourself, if you don't have a desire to get to know the answer to the question you're asking, you're not going to find it. So when you ask yourself a question just for the sake of it and just to see if you can do it, well, there's no real question.
Just out of interest, how was it for you at the beginning when you first started talking to yourself? And I mean that obviously in the sanest way, not like
Yeah, I mean, for me in the beginning it was in circles. My internal monologue came from a place where I felt alone as a kid. I felt very alone in the sense that I felt I was living in a world that was full of lies. Or the world was a lie. I couldn't make sense of it in the beginning. It's taken me a long time to actually understand it. But basically, I would like ask myself like, why is this person doing this? Why is this person doing that? Like, why are you lying? Why are you being mean? Why don't you care? Why don't you have a heart? A lot of it was like heartless. I thought people were heartless. I'm like, where's your heart? Why do you do that? Why do you not care about what he feels? I feel like this empathy thing. So when I couldn't understand why things were happening in this world and I felt like an outsider, it kind of forces you to talk to yourself.
Okay.
It really does. You don't have a choice. Because you can't really speak to someone else who feels the same way as you do. Because you also, I was made to feel like I'm the problem. I was made to feel like I'm the one with the problem. When I was looking in this world and I'm like, well, what's the point? And someone who says, what's the point of this world? Who looks at the wealthy people and say, like, what are you actually doing in this world? People will look at you like, well, you're depressed, like, what do you mean, what's the point of the world? Like, life is amazing, life is good, go out and live, go out and make friends. Like, they'll look at you as you're depressed, and then as a kid who's easily influenced, you start thinking you are the problem. So I was forced to speak to myself. I was forced to come up with my own answers because I couldn't find the answers elsewhere. It's like no one wants to accept that the world is a bad place. No one wants to accept that people are bad. But that's what I was thinking as a kid. I'm like, well, why are you lying? Why are you hurting? Why do you not care that this person is upset? Why is there no empathy? Why are you all so heartless? And again, I was made to feel like I was a problem, so I had to speak to myself. And as the years went on, I realized that speaking to myself, I found the answers. I've had conversations with myself for so long that I don't think I've come close to speaking to anyone as much as I've spoken to myself. And when you speak to any human being that much, you'll find things out. It's like you can sit at home for 3 hours, you watch TV, you won't get anything really done, but you go out for a dinner or a business meeting, whatever, you start talking to people and you learn. We know this, like people say, go travel the world, speak to people, meet people, and you will grow as a person. Well, the same goes for speaking to yourself. You can speak to yourself and grow a lot.
Would you say it taught you a lot of valuable lessons as well? Speaking to yourself in that context?
100%. It did teach me a lot of valuable lessons. Like, I struggle to answer that question because there's so many valuable lessons. So I'm like thinking, well, which lessons did I learn? But there's just so many.
Yeah.
It would have to be a bit more specific for me to. It's the most powerful thing. I promise you. There's nothing more powerful than it. If you just speak to yourself properly, it's just growth in a level that people can't imagine. Really.
You've obviously been doing this for, as you said, since you were a kid. So it's been something that you've been kind of subconsciously practicing for a long time, right? So you've had kind of, I imagine, progressions with that. I imagine at the beginning it was probably kind of quite vague conversations with yourself, whereas now I imagine them much more intense.
I think it's very important for people to also understand this. Like in the last video, I said like, this is just one line that there's so much behind it, which is that's not good enough.
Yeah.
It's like when you say this person is just a bad person, that's not good enough. I'm upset, that's not good enough. This line of that's not good enough has years and years of self-blame, self-doubt, just completely destroying myself for me to have learned that. Because I spent years and years having that be good enough. Like, you're the problem. You're the problem. Like, people are bad. The world is bad. People are liars. People can't be trusted. And that was good enough for me for so long. But because I said that's good enough, imagine a world where that's it. That's all it is for you. That's what the world is for you. People are bad. People lie. And this is true. No one can deny. No one can come to me and say, David, you're wrong. People don't lie. People don't hurt each other. Like, go read a history book.
Yeah,
like, honestly, like, what are you talking about? Like, seriously.
No.
Like, stop deluding. Stop lying to yourself. Like, genuinely. So when I put that wall up and that's all the world is, man, I went through some rough years. But that one line that I said in a video, which is just like, I want people I want it to click for them. I want it to go deep inside them for them to understand it, because I know how powerful that one line is, and the years of hurt and pain and experience that it took me to get to that one line, which is that's not good enough. And that gets you to continue conversing with yourself. It's not good enough. Okay, so you had a rough breakup. She's selfish. You know, that's not good enough. You'll never process that pain. You will hurt for the rest of your life. It just wasn't meant to be. That's probably better than saying she's selfish and blaming it on her. That's probably better, but it's still not good enough. You will have that in your mind for the rest of your life. This line of that's not good enough needs to be used all the time. Whenever you're trying to explain something away, it's not good enough. Delve deep. Because guess what? When it's good enough, you won't have to say it's good enough. You'll have peace in your heart. And that's when you know it's good enough. It's not a statement that you'll need to make.
Would you apply that question to everything? That's not good enough.
I think
like literally with every decision that you're making, if you get to a point where you get to yourself where your internal self says, okay, that's whatever the result is your next question always, that's not good enough? And then they ask more.
When you know that it's finished, you will not look back. It's done. You've attained it.
And you wouldn't ask the question either.
Do you know what attaining it is? Like, attaining is when you know deep inside you've attained it. It's like, we don't have to go over why 1 + 1 = 2. We solved that when we were kids and we never looked back on it. It's obvious to us. As long as you're looking back, it's like it's not good enough. If you think this is what I said about forgiveness. Like, if you think you've forgiven someone but you still have some hurt, you haven't truly forgiven them. People, I know what people respond to that, and I know I'm not dumb. But I promise you, true forgiveness means that you just don't feel anything towards it anymore because you've understood it 100%, not 99, not 98. And it's the same thing with speaking to yourself. It's like when you've actually come up with the proper solution, you've understood, it's finished, it's a book, you've written it, you've analyzed it. It's like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why do I think that? My book of the world was open for so long, and it still is open. But it was a book that I couldn't read for so long because I refused to accept the problem. Now that I've accepted it, we have this channel. We're trying to make the world a better place. We're not going to delude ourselves that the world is lovely and then you know, go just work, try and make money for the rest of our lives. Like, no, that's not good enough for me. Because I understand what the world is. I went through the pain of feeling the world, and I want to now make a change in it. So you have to keep writing the book until you can actually close it, and that's closure. And that's why we use the word closure. Why do you think we use the word closure? It's like a book that you need to be able to close and put away.
And it's done. You don't need to go back to it. It's just finished.
If you want to go back to it, you do it because you want to. You know.
Yeah. Just going back to the forgiveness thing, though. You can understand with the forgiving of other people. If you understand and there's no hurt, you can understand with forgiveness of other people, right? In talking to yourself, there's a lot of things that we've probably done in our lives as a human race that we perhaps haven't forgiven ourselves for.
Yeah. Right?
And that could be one of the mental blocks in talking to yourself. Maybe it's something you can't forgive yourself for. But if you can understand the principle of forgiveness as we talked about in the video, you know, you've got to fully understand to be able to forgive. And if you haven't fully understood it, you can't fully forgive. If you still have resentment towards it, you haven't fully understood it. But within yourself, there are things that other people would be able to forgive you. If you said them out loud, it's like, why are you even held up on that? Like, why are you even still thinking about that? But finding forgiveness for things in ourselves is very difficult, especially for me. Like, if I've done something that I think has hurt somebody, for example, they might have already forgiven me for it. They might have already understood it. They might have already completely, processed it, and they might have actually forgiven me for it.
Yeah.
But I haven't forgiven myself for it. Is it the same principle with yourself? Like, can you have the same understanding with yourself to forgive yourself for things that you couldn't have?
Okay, so it's interesting. It's not about understanding. It is, but it isn't. In that sense, about forgiving yourself, I would say it's more so accepting the things that you don't want to accept, and that's the root, and that is the wall between the understanding. Yeah, okay, you want to get to the understanding, but it's not technically about the understanding. Technically, it's about accepting the things you don't want to accept, because the thing you will need to accept when you've hurt someone else and they've forgiven you is like, okay, I'm not as good of a person as I thought I was. Like, I'm capable of that evil. I'm capable of that bad. I'm capable of hurting someone. That's the things that we don't want to accept. And it's very, and it's very, that's why it's easier for us to talk to other people as well, and it's not as easy to talk to ourselves, because we can accept things about other people very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Like someone will tell you about a mistake that they made. It's like, you accept it because you view other people like, flawed. They're all flawed. Everyone's flawed. But you don't want to view yourself as flawed. It's a painful thing to accept. And that's what we said before in the video yesterday, is that it will lead to pain.
Yeah.
Because you have to accept you were selfish. You were a really bad person in that instance. Like, you didn't care about the other person. You only cared about yourself. And that's hard to accept, because what do you do with that? So you don't accept it, because like, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
But once you've accepted it, it's like, okay, understand yourself. And that's when you can understand yourself. Once you've accepted that, it's like, okay, I have an ego. And this ego caused a lot of pain in that moment. And then the next time you might think twice. But when you refuse to accept that you have an ego, and that you chose yourself over someone else, and that you inflicted pain on someone else, do it again. And
you can also never get past it, even if you wanted to. Like, you can't go around that anymore.
It's like denying the enemy within you. If you deny the enemy within you, then they can sneak, and they will sneak.
Yeah.
It's like having a thief in your house, and things just keep disappearing. Oof, I wonder why. And someone comes up to you, or you come up to yourself, and you're like, well, you have a thief in your house. Like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? And the next day, something else is missing. And something else is missing. And this will happen in your life and in your world. Things will disappear. People will disappear.
Yeah.
You start losing things in your life, and your life will be a mess. And, well, you have a thief in your house. I don't. But the second that you admit, yeah, I have one, now you can do something about it. And it's the same thing. It's like, I have something inside of me, and that's the ego, and it hurts people, and it's not nice, and it's not a good person. If you think about it like this, like if you take some bad things that you've done in your life, right, and you take that person that did those things, and then you ask yourself, would I want this person to be friends with my sister? Would I want this person to date my sister? It's like, no, I wouldn't put this person anywhere near my sister.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so you don't like this person, and it's very hard to accept that, because it's you. And you can use examples in this to make it a lot easier for you, but like, pretend that it's someone else, that you are someone else. It's like, okay, you lied to this person, and then you went around their back and you did this. Whatever it is, you take that example, and then you apply that example to someone else, and have pretend that someone else has asked you, what would you think about a person who did this, this, and that? You're like, that guy's really bad.
Yeah.
But it's you, and you don't want to accept that you're really bad, so you won't accept, and you will deny it, and that will stop you from speaking to yourself. But you have to. There's nothing bad about being wrong. We're all wrong in our lives. We're all wrong at some point in our lives. You have to accept it and then fix it. Accept that you weren't a good person here, that you weren't a good person there. And accept the same thing about other people as well. That's what happened with me. I was unwilling to accept that. Yes, people are liars. People are this, people are that. I had a wall there. I didn't want to accept it. And when I wasn't able to accept it, that's where depression comes in. Because you're living a lie.
And because you haven't accepted your own your own bads and goods inside yourself, especially the bads, obviously, in that context. Like, you haven't accepted that there is...
You don't accept the bad or the good anyway. Like, within you, within others, within the world.
with everything, yeah. But I mean, with the internal context, it's if you can't really, accept the things that you've done, you can never really move past those things that you've done either.
Why do you think they say ignorance is bliss?
Because it really is sometimes. Like, you just...
It truly is. Ignorance is actual bliss. I like, there have been times where I've realized, like, I was much happier not knowing these things.
Yeah.
I like living in a lie. Like, sometimes very little, like, in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, ignorance can be bliss. As long as you have no hint of the truth, ignorance is bliss. But as soon as the truth starts coming into your life, like, you either accept it or you're going to be living in hell. If I was to imagine and define hell, that's limbo, is it not?
Yeah.
Is that not limbo? It is.
No, it is. You're just stuck. You can't...
Stuck between the truth and your delusions.
Yeah.